introduce you in a more elaborate method. Is that okay?
Fine by me.
Fine.
I think Kim mentioned last time. Are we on? Yep, we're on.
Just give 1 second.
Yeah. So Kim mentioned that we all have to say present, or should.
Mr. Chair, you are live.
Ooh, yay. Hello and welcome. A quorum being present, here's my gavel. This meeting of the Annapolis Historic Preservation Commission shall come to order. The commission operates pursuant to the land use article of the annotated code of the state of Maryland. Local authority for the commission is derived from Municipal Code of the City of Annapolis, Chapter 21, Section 56. The purpose of the HPC is to enhance the quality of life, strengthen the local economy, stabilize and improve property values, foster civic beauty, and to preserve and promote preservation and appreciation of historic sites and structures. Requirements for serving on the commission are detailed in Chapter 21, Section 8.06. The HPC operates pursuant to the State of Maryland Open Meetings Act, and therefore no pending application shall be discussed amongst or between commissioners outside the public hearing to determine the disposition of the application. Okay. So roll call. Bill Williams.
Here.
Kim Finch.
Here. Present.
Bobby Collins.
Here.
Will Scott.
Here.
Tim Leahy. Here. Staff. Roberta Lehner. Here. And assistant staff, John Tower.
Present.
Representing the Office of Law, Joel Braithwaite. And our recorder is Ms. Tammy Hook.
Here.
Our next item on the procedure is to swear in any applicants or anyone who is plans to testify this evening. Anyone who plans to enter comments regarding any of the applications that we heard tonight, if you intend to testify, please rise and I love this. Rise and raise your right hand. There you go.
Do I raise my right hand? Yeah. I'm not sure how many comments I'll be making, but
Good job. Julian picked up on this on the fly. Maybe he did it, but yes, do affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony given and the statements you shall make are true to the best of your information, knowledge, and belief. Please respond by saying, I do.
I do.
I do.
Thank you. All right. Next on the agenda is announcements. Roberta,
Yes.
I had to click back and forth. Yes. Announcements?
Yes, I'm just checking to make sure you can hear me and see me. Is that correct?
Yes.
The only announcement I have, and our assistant attorney Joelle Braithwaite might want to weigh in, but I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew that any changes related to outdoor dining are considered temporary under the state of emergency and are taking place as special events, and they should not affect the buildings or the property in any permanent way. Just wanted to make sure everyone understood that. Braithwaite, do you want to weigh in at all?
Kim, I'm having trouble hearing Roberta.
I had to turn my volume up on my computer too.
I did too, and I still can't.
Roberta, can you just hold the phone real close to your mouth?
That, yep.
That's better.
Yes, that is. Thank you.
So Will, did you get the gist of what she was saying?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah. So Roberta, you're just going to need to move it real close to your mouth. Okay. gonna toggle back and forth here. We did have approval of minutes on the agenda for May 12th, but we need to remove them. Sherry, Roberta, maybe you can explain, or it didn't, we can't do those tonight. Or Tammy, I'm not sure, but those are not on the agenda tonight. We'll do those in July. Okay. Next on the agenda is violations. Any violations from Roberta or commissioners?
What's going on?
Update.
If
Sorry?
Roberta was speaking, I couldn't hear anything.
Roberta, I think you were better off when you're beforehand, when you're actually holding it to your face. And now, right now, nothing's coming through on your phone. Can you try something now?
No.
Don't. Okay. Well,
Roberta, is it possible you've pressed the mute on your phone?
you know, on the front, on the face of it. Well, Roberta, you're not frozen right now, so why don't we get you back on here for now so we can make it through it. So I just asked you to unmute. Can you unmute yourself there on your iPad?
Okay.
Oh. I should have said that. She froze. Okay, Roberta, I think we might be able to hear you now.
Okay, did you want me to update violations?
Yeah, that would be great. You sound great.
Oh, good. Not sure why, but okay. I actually don't have any updates on violations.
Yay.
A number of them are being postponed because court dates are being postponed.
Okay. All right. Any other violations, commissioners, questions? Okay. Next item on the agenda is consent docket. For the applicants, this is a procedure designed to expedite certain applications. In order to be considered for the consent docket, the application must have received recommendations for approval from all the city staff and commission's technical advisors. Also, there needs to be no public opposition to the application. If an application is approved on the consent docket, and by the way, I'm sorry, Julian, I didn't tell you can turn on everybody at this point.
Yeah, they're all here, ready for you.
All right.
So when as soon as you want them, you can ask them, and they'll turn on.
All right. The application on Prince George Street is eligible for the consent docket this evening. There were no opposition. There was no opposition. And it, I don't believe, had any conditions. So therefore, I'll accept a motion. And let me explain to the applicants to the reason we need to do the consent docket is because if there is opposition, public opposition, it needs to come forward. We don't need to, so that's why we do this. It seems to be rather procedural, but if there's opposition, we need to hear it. If there's no opposition, we can move forward. It's compliant in every way, and staff, you've worked well with staff, and the staff has no conditions. So,
Mr. Chair, would you like Danny and Alex forward right now, who are with Prince George?
yes.
Do you guys want to turn your cameras on there?
So I unmuted myself. It says my video is disabled right now. I think it says the host has disabled the video.
Nah.
Oh, there we go.
Let's see, does that do anything?
Yep. Got
Not
it.
sure what happened. Sorry about that.
There we
You're
go.
good.
So At this point, I think I tried to explain what the consent docket is and why we ask you to come to a meeting. I'll accept a motion to take the Prince George Street application onto the consent docket. And
I move that we accept the application for 189 Prince George Street. It actually does have a conditional approval on the paper that I'm looking for,
Good.
with two conditions. The applicant shall ensure that plumbing permit application for the gas line is reviewed by the Historic Preservation Division, and the applicant shall schedule the city's consulting archaeologist to conduct archaeological monitoring to coincide with commencement of the excavation for the new gas line.
okay, so I needed to ask to the applicant, Alex and Danny, do you accept those conditions?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I'll take a second.
Second.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All abstained? All right. Thank you. So that means your application has been approved on the consent docket, and please just remove the big placard from the front of your house and move forward with your project. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. So we're good to go? To hop
Yes, you
off?
are. Yes, you are. You can.
I'm free to go?
No, feel free to hang out. I mean,
Watch
All
us
right. Thank you,
stumble.
guys.
So hey, could I clarify one thing? You want to get your certificate before you begin. That's important. You do actually want to have it before you begin. And if
yes.
you have a plumbing permit, you want to have that also.
Okay.
So keep
Also-
coming back to City Hall to get your certificates.
You can
Okay.
just call the permit counter and
Sure.
they'll respond.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Have a good evening.
You too. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is new business, 163 Duke of Gloucester Street. Through our normal process here, let me go back to I need like 5 screens, don't I? So Julian, you can activate everyone else, particularly Mimi and Donovan, who will be making their presentation.
Okay, if you could both turn your cameras on and your mics, that'd be great.
There we go.
Or maybe if you just want to turn your mic on, that's fine.
But yeah, my video's blocked, so
Yeah.
I changed.
So yeah, they're both here now for you.
Yep.
Thank you. So we always ask which commissioners made site visits for the record. Yes. And Tammy, I accepted 4 exhibits into the record, correct? You're muted, Tammy.
Yes, do you want to, want me to spell them out, or do you want to?
Yeah, go ahead, yes.
Okay, let me do that. Okay. Exhibit A is the HPC public hearing application for a certificate of approval dated February 24th. Exhibit B, oh my goodness, I got the wrong one. Maynard Burgess House Draft Field Report dated June 1st.
Yeah.
That's part of it.
Is the staff report and recommendation dated 6/2, and for some strange reason, I've lost my exhibit D.
That was the HA comments that came in today.
Karen Brown.
Karen Brown's comments from Historic Annapolis
Okay,
in support.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. All right, so I'll turn it over to Donovan and Mimi to just take us through the application. Anything you'd like us to know. It's a very complete application, but whatever you'd like us to know, please tell us.
Well, the intent of the project, as you know, is just to complete the work that was originally scheduled in 2013. But at the time, we didn't have the funds to complete the project. So we're here today to put in an application to complete that work. The work is going to entail renovating the first floor. Also, the construction of a 5'10" by 7'9" unisex restroom on the first floor. The addition will be distinguishable from the historic portions of the building. And we're also going to install some HVAC mechanical equipment along with the electrical lighting and power for receptacles in the building.
Mhm.
As far as down to the details, in the the restroom will have a TPO membrane roofing, while the historic building has a standing seam roof, metal roof. And as far as the details of the construction and the design of the building, I'll turn it over to Mimi Jagir.
Thank you, Donovan. So the addition itself will be framed with 2x6 wall framing. And I cannot remember the size of the rafters. Simple wood frame rafters and ceiling joists on a concrete block foundation. The alignment of the addition on the rear of the building is set up so that we could use the existing door that goes to the exterior currently as the entry door to the restroom. And so that we did not impinge on the existing window that is adjacent to that doorway. And in so doing that, there are some archaeological resources around the old root cellar and so forth that are in that general vicinity. So we will need to have some archaeological verification as we proceed, and that if necessary, we will have to modify the foundation in that area to bridge over those resources. We're aware of that possibility. That and the other thing that I would add to what Donovan had said about the main house outfitting is that we're also adding insulation along with the HVAC, because otherwise we'd have all our conditioning going right through the wall because there's nothing there.
Right.
The addition is to be sided with cedar lap siding, similar to the siding that's on the house, although the siding that's on the house is not cedar, and the siding on the house is variable in the lap width, and this will be a standardized lap width that's sort of a contemporary dimension at 6 inches and standardized. And we've also designed a banding adjacent to the edge of the house where the new siding will meet the existing house siding, to provide a separation border at the beginning of the new material. So it's a vertical board separation with an offset in it to indicate that separation. The existing historic wood siding on that wall will remain exposed as the new wall inside the restroom, so that the historical material will remain.
Mimi, can you still hear us?
Yep, I can.
Okay, great.
I think
Thank you. That's it? Great.
I think that's most of it. I guess the only other thing I guess I would add is that, again, as part of the conditioning strategy, we'll be adding some insulation and waterproofing material or damp-proofing material in the crawl space, vapor barrier in the crawl space, in order to provide a weather barrier there to the conditioned space in the crawl space. We'll be running plumbing piping through that crawl space, so it'll be using residual heat from the space above to keep the plumbing functional.
Great.
That's it.
All right. Commissioners, questions for Mimi or Donovan? Okay, hearing none. Now I will turn it over to Roberta for a staff report, which again was very detailed, and I'll comment now. This project has been going on for a long time, as Donovan said, and the funding wasn't available 7 years ago, amazingly. But there is probably no more important site that the city owns at this time. So it's appropriate that we pay attention and use our time and funds to do it right.
Mhm.
Okay, Roberta.
First of all, I want to make sure everyone can hear me, as I apologize. We've had a number of audio issues tonight.
It's okay. We're good.
Can everyone
fine.
hear me?
Yes.
Here.
Okay. Julian, could you load the PowerPoint? Great. I'm providing slides to supplement my staff report and also to give you something else to look at besides my face. So here we have the Maynard Burgess house, and if you could advance to slide 2, please. So in this slide, I am illustrating significance, where I say archaeological and architectural features specifically connect us to 143 years of occupation by African American families. And that's just 2 African American families. I usually skip rather lightly over the history of a property, but in this case, it's important to review the significance documented not only through studies, but also through features, as seen here in photos from our current investigation on the architectural artifacts. So it's incredible that only 2 African American families, no white people, owned and lived in this house between 1847 and 1990. We have John Maynard, who was free and a very morally responsible citizen. He actually purchased the freedom for his enslaved wife, her daughter, and his mother-in-law. Then next we had Willis Burgess, who was a boarder in the house, but he cared enough about it to purchase it when the mortgage defaulted. So therefore, we have a huge responsibility to preserve their heritage. Next slide, please.
That's my
So
car.
in this slide, I'm
That's my car.
illustrating evolution. Your car?
That's my car right there.
Wow. So I'm illustrating evolution, where I say multiple changes over time have been documented through historical, archaeological, and architectural studies. So the tiny 18th century core of this house grew to a dwelling of substantial size, not just the African American community, but a substantial size really for the city as well. On page 3 of my staff report, I listed 7 phases of construction, and we are still counting. By that, I mean we're updating and we're adding to the construction phase count as we learn more about the house, and we're continually learning more about the house. And by the way, 10 types of siding on this house were identified by conservator Carrie Howlett. 10 types.
10 times. And
Next
again,
slide,
well, I'll just say that we've been involved in this for 10 or more years. And what was fascinating was the siding was brought from other buildings and put on, first of all, it was moved in the first place. And they would bring siding from other buildings being torn down or renovated, and they would move them onto this house, which I just think is a fascinating.
Absolutely. So in this slide, I'm illustrating the situation today where I say we're challenged to preserve a building in fragile condition with city special exception approval for government-related use. So I understand totally that we are concerned and trying to make a viable resource here. But I have to stress that a concern we have in our division is about certain decisions on the design that have to reflect code requirements of government use rather than museum use. So, you know, that's a different level of review because it was decided, you know, back in 1913, probably. 2013, sorry.
Wow.
That it would be a government use and used for offices, for City Hall. And also some, hopefully, museum use as well, but just an exhibit. I note that the plans reviewer already has issues with the code, and that's because of this strict level and the bathroom addition and the ADA standards as well. So I want to just reiterate that the exterior features that you are dealing with of interest to this commission, they're listed on page 3, but that includes the galleted stone foundation,
right,
seen on the wealthiest of houses, as well as vernacular houses like this one. The siding, which actually I said 19th century in the report, there is 18th century as well. Stone walls on the east side of the property, some of the windows, and especially the attic windows, and of course, the archaeological remains. Next slide, please. Now I just want to run quickly through some highlights of the review. And so in this slide, I'm going to highlight some of the selected guidelines. So the first one is staff participation with design and contractors. And that specifically relates to B9, reconstruction of building components, and D1, the Secretary Standards. So as city staff, we also are very much part of the ownership of this property and responsible for its preservation. And sadly, we've discovered that we have too much experience with workmen on site not really adhering to the guidelines. And in many cases, they just haven't received any guidance regarding our conditions. So we recommend constant on-site participation and decision input to ensure that the preservation of so many of these fragile components that you're seeing in the photographs. And I'd like very much to note that we have a good relationship with Public Works in general and Mr. Harold specifically. Next slide, please. I'm sorry, let's back up just a minute, please. And the next guideline I wanted to talk about is the roof. And this is a clarification that staff requested the roof type changed to a membrane since it has a low pitch, and really it also wasn't worth dealing with our strict standards for metal roofs in such a small area. The change is reflected in the application description, but not in the drawings yet. Also, our stormwater engineer has an issue with runoff from the gutter, but that's easy to fix at the building permit level and beyond. And then I'd like to talk about landscape grading and planting. So we're recommending a change in the landscape that's more traditional, less contemporary, and less invasive than the grading and the plantings proposed. And by doing so, we also fully intend to meet the requirements of lot coverage with any plantings, because there are some plantings that are required. But we'd like to consider some changes to that under staff review.
Okay.
Then we can talk about historic alterations, D4. So the alterations actually overlap, many done by the owners, and a multitude actually of changes made since it first changed hands in 1991 to a private owner and ultimately the city. Both Maynard and Burgess, both families, they were experts in recycling. So I like to call this the greenest house in Annapolis.
True.
Because materials just moved around from room to room to room and outside in different places. So we don't want to lose the history of the families moving materials around to improve their home. That history is terrific. So this is just another detail I'm trying to make sure everyone is paying attention to. Next, we can mention repair over replacement, D5. You know, that's pretty much a given. This commission understands it's so easy to replace, and it's really impossible to recreate history once it's lost. And since history can also be lost with a repair technique, we're recommending staff approval for any repair proposals. Next, I'll mention Masonry D14. Masonry these days is just one of our biggest challenges. That's why we require actual masonry sample panels and a test on site before work begins. Because again, it's the communication, you know, from what's written to what's actually happening. Next, I'll mention windows D18 and 19. The windows have really been worked over, and we look forward to some insight in understanding why the first floor windows were installed as 6/9 instead of 9/6. The attic windows and their framing are really pristine. So again, we recommend staff approvals for proposed repairs on or other alterations. Then in heating and air and fire suppression, D29, we are in agreement with the consulting architect, Michael Dowling, to consider a change in or reconsider the impact of the new heating and air that's designed for that space, because the attic, as I said, is very close, if not entirely, in pristine conditions. So the attic was in fact another living space, not as we think of it as an attic. And the way the heating and air is designed right now, it only affects the commission's deliberation related to the exterior units. Right. So we recommend that the commission allow staff review for any change to exterior units. So that's really only the 2 condensing units we're talking about outside that might change a little bit. And then of course, Archaeology E1, everyone's familiar with the fact that this is one of the richest archaeological sites in Annapolis. Papers, dissertations, 2 books have been written about the resources, so therefore archaeological monitoring is essential. And I listed 10 conditions as number 10, but I think what I just finished saying about 1 through 9 explains my conditions, and I can answer questions about them when you have them.
Okay.
Now we can go on to the next slide. So we're going to summarize with the future, what that holds after tonight's decision, where we say preserving the details with respect will preserve the story for tomorrow. So this is a 1994 photo of the house. Sorry, I don't, is that your car, Tim? I don't know.
No, that's my brother's car.
Okay.
It's a Jetta.
So this 94 photo is showing the dormers, which I keep mentioning. And then also an interior detail of the dormers, just so you understand the construction then that you ultimately see from the outside.
Yeah.
So that's all I have, but I do want to offer John Tower time now so he can give his own remarks about the project.
Well, I'll keep it simple. There really isn't an equivalent structure in Annapolis. Everything that Maynard achieved, he achieved swimming against the current. And it is up to us to preserve it and to restore it and to do the best work that we can for it. This is a precious resource. I've always thought so. My opinion hasn't changed in 20 years when I first found out what the house was. And I'm glad that it's going to have an adaptive use. It's been vacant for a long time. We just need to be very careful in how we create the changes. So I'm happy to be involved in decisions, happy to come on site, happy to do anything that would positively affect this project.
Okay, thanks, John. From the applicant point of view, Donovan or Mimi, do you have any questions for Roberta?
I think, where am I? Oh, I'm there. I have, I want to make sure that everybody understands that, you know, we have been committed to the history of this house for the 10 years or so that we've been working on it. So it's not, there's no effort being made here to cover over important details or anything of that matter. I did have one question for Roberta. The archaeological monitoring that needs to take place here, which we understand, is that going to be through the city's consulting archaeologist, or is that something that the city has to contract separately?
That would be the city's consulting archaeologist.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure of that. As we finish specifications for bidding, I want to make sure that, you know, it gets covered.
Right. Okay. Commissioners, any questions for Roberta?
May I add to that though? If there are new finds, then we have to rethink what the next step would be, just like you would from a phase 1 to a phase 2. So we expect that it has been pretty thoroughly investigated archaeologically, but one never knows.
Correct. Understood. And that's why, yeah, and that's why we have thought about alternative strategies for that piece of foundation. There's a possibility that we could build. We've had this conversation with the structural engineer that we could build a essentially a grade beam just above grade to bridge over that material. That would have some impact on the stone wall of the house because we'd have to have a place to open up in there to seat that grade beam so that it has something to bear on that side. So we might have to remove a couple of stones from the house in order to get a bearing point for that grade beam, which is why we didn't propose it to begin with. But if the archaeology indicates that we need to bridge over that resource to leave it in place, we have a strategy by which we can consider doing that.
Go ahead, John.
I didn't actually have something to say. I thought.
Oh, okay. It looked like you were clicking on.
It's when you start talking,
we look,
it clicked on.
we look forward to talking further about that with you and the engineer should that situation arise.
Perfect example of what we're talking about. Okay, commissioners, questions for
question.
Roberta? Yeah, go ahead.
This is really for Roberta, I guess, unless you want to defer to John to address it.
Either way.
The photograph of the inside of the dormers was of great interest to me. That material is 18th century. That wood that was visible from the interior of the dormer.
Probably.
Likely 19th.
19th?
Yeah,
Likely 19th, yes, because the second story was added
Added. Yeah.
in the
The attic, and the attic was added in second.
I was really hopeful that I don't know, I wasn't following, I guess, the sequencing properly. But anyway, my real question is related to that and all the other surviving bits of material that are historically significant. Is there going to be a way that the public could easily access, you know, this one window is entirely original material or things like that? Is that going to be part of the public information that's available to anyone who's interested in the building?
so we would love to see an interpretive plan. Right now, we don't have one, and we have recommended that that the city either provide funding or out of the budget or a grant funding to present a proposal to be able to exhibit everything like that. We certainly did that in Colonial Williamsburg constantly. And I would love to see that here as well. Right now, there is not funding for it.
Do you have a budget or a proposed budget for it?
No, we do not at the moment.
I'll chime in there. I think there are grant opportunities for this.
Yeah, yes, and we will try to pursue those, Tim.
Yeah, I think very important, and the commission, I would suggest, would want to write a letter in support and do anything like that that we can to move it forward. And finally, I just want to say that I thought that was one of the most thorough reports that I have ever read from any staff office, and
thank you.
It answered all the questions that I had going in. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
All right.
It's just such an important house that I wanted to
unique.
Cover everything that we knew to this point anyway.
Right. I think you've brought it up to date, which is excellent. All right. Any other questions for staff?
If I could add to that for just a moment, Tim, just in the last 2 days, I found additional information about what we've been trying to figure out is history since 1991, because it has passed back and forth so many times. And there is one little paragraph in the report that I was wondering if it would be acceptable to update, and I could even read it, but it basically just pins down a couple of dates. For example, the city took ownership in 1993. I know that now because I've seen deed research on it.
You find
so
update
if you would
that?
just accept that, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, we can accept an amended staff report with the additional information. Yeah, this just amazing history of this house and history of something called Port of Annapolis, which existed in an interim period between HA and another period being turned over to the city. So as commissioners or anyone interested in the city history of preservation, this building is kind of a poster child. So. All right. Okay, I need to open up for public testimony, which we do. We received one submission from Historic Annapolis in support, and that's in the record. So with that, I guess I'll close public testimony. And next we go into deliberations. Thoughts on this application? And
Mr. Chair, did you read the comments that you received on this house into the record?
I did not. I can. My thought was it was totally supportive, but if Joel, if you think I should.
Just so that we have a complete record, Mr. Chair.
All right, let me find them. It's from Historic Annapolis. It might. I understand what you're saying, Joel.
Joel, can I just chime in here? As far as all the discussion, as far as public testimony, that's the city attorney's kind of ruled that we don't have to, as long as we state that it's been received. It doesn't actually have to go and be read or have a full reading because of the subtext of people's tone and things like that. So it's not a long conversation. I just want to throw that in there.
And I'll defer to you, sir.
So, I mean, so Mr. Chair, if you want, from what the city attorney has been saying, if you want, you can just accept it into.
Okay, it was fully in support. So I think Joel had advised us earlier if it was contentious or a negative thing, we should read it into the record. And now I can't even find it. So sorry. Oh, here it is. I have no problem reading it in. Let's be procedural. So, and everyone should hear this because it's HA's role in support is important. So here it is. Historic Annapolis wishes to convey our full support of the HPC application to modify the Maynard Burgess House to include the installation of ADA compliant bathroom addition in the rear, install new HVAC and sprinkler system, various repairs. As noted in Michael Dowling's comments, the property is significant and the preservation of existing historic fabrics is of utmost importance. We also support staff's recommendation to ensure minimal damage to the fabric that remains. This is a significant property that needs investment, and we appreciate the city's leadership in making this happen. The history associated with the Maynard Burgess House must be accessible and documented for future generations. Investment in this property is an important piece of a master interpretive plan. Thank you for this opportunity to comment. Karen Brown. Okay. All right. So public comment is closed. Deliberations among commissioners. Any comments? Thoughts? I think we've, this has been a wonderful, I'll start. This has just been a good example of a very important building that's gone through a variety of phases with us for 10 years, and it's exciting to get to this point. And so I am wholeheartedly in favor of moving it forward. And all of the recommendations, then there are a lot, they all are grounded in the guidelines with specific things and specific items that Roberta cross-referenced, which I really appreciate. So. Yes, you raise your hand with your pen.
Yes. Since we're talking about historic preservation, and I've just caught myself up to the last episode of The Outlander.
Oh my God.
I simply want to say, in the spirit of those two things, huzzah, huzzah, huzzah.
There you go, huzzah. Is that what they say on the show?
Pardon?
Is that what they say on the show when they're going into battle?
You know, it's an 18th century thing.
I know.
Throughout the English speaking world.
Yes, Anglophile stuff.
Yeah.
All right, Bobby?
I would just like to commend staff because after reading 171 pages of the application, I was a little overwhelmed, to put it mildly. And I really appreciate the work that Roberta did to both boil it all down to the really important points and also come up with the conditions that would make it possible for us to move forward with the project while still very carefully safeguarding the amazing history that it has. So,
Bill, any comments?
Thank you.
No real comments. Yeah.
Concur?
I just concur to the overall success of the.
Absolutely. Kim?
Well, I just wanted to say that Tim, I think I was there a little bit before you, but
I
this
think
is
you were.
a project that
I know.
we have been dealing with since I began on the Historic Preservation
Me too.
Commission. So it's really gratifying to find it coming in at such a
Yes, so we can,
time and being so well thought through and resolved. It's truly something to be thankful for. I really appreciate the work everybody's put into it over the years, and I think now I feel very comfortable that we've done a full and fair job to it.
great. I agree. All right, then I'll take a motion.
I move that we accept the application for 163 Duke of Gloucester, known as the Burgess House, to approve it with the conditions rather than reading them out. Simply refer to it as all the conditions that are listed in the staff report. And as long as the applicant agrees with those, we can vote.
Second.
Okay. Applicant, do you agree with all of those conditions?
We agree.
All right. I'll take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All abstain? All right. Passes unanimously. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We look forward to it. All right. I lost my agenda. I think it's any other business.
Not for me.
Anybody else? I think we do have a meeting on the, I think, is that right? 25th of June?
Yes.
And we have 2 pre-applications. So that'll be our first pre-applications that are done in a Zoom meeting. We had been hoping to avoid them, but now here we are, and I think it's probably we should give it a shot. As I understand it, there will be no, that won't change. We won't go to live meetings before July at the earliest. So I believe we will have another Zoom extravaganza. And the agenda, I think I'm not sure it's published already, but there are 2 items on the agenda. They're both pre-apps. I'm also, again, saying let's kick the rules of procedure finalization down the road, another meeting that's not urgent. And I do really think that works best personally, in person.
Tim, could I bring up one more thing?
Sure.
Okay, so I wanted to confirm the meeting we're having with Fred on
oh yeah,
ethics in July. Is that in person or is it virtual?
Roberta, I think
Right now it's virtual.
Yeah,
Okay.
right now it's virtual.
Okay, that's fine. And then my second item is that the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions
Yeah.
is going to be virtual this
Right.
summer.
Yep.
And is there potential to have that covered through our certified local government training program? Because it's always very well done, and we wouldn't have to pay, there wouldn't be travel expenses. But there will be a registration fee, as I understand it. I'm getting updates on it.
Well, the National Alliance annual meeting that was in Tacoma. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
That has switched to virtual.
Right. But there's still a fee.
And that's $100 fee. And the registration is open next week. And yes, absolutely, that's eligible for reimbursement under the CLG grant.
Great.
Okay, I just wanted to remind everybody.
That's great, Kim.
And you can think of other virtual training as well, because the grant we received actually covered some travel. So, and nobody's traveling. So they're welcome to have us submit for other
Other-
courses they authorize.
Yeah,
So,
Tim, with regard, I'm sorry, Tim, I'm
Go ahead.
cutting in, but I have been watching for the last 10 weeks. Baltimore Heritage has been doing
Yeah.
5-minute videos.
Yes,
Day,
5-minute histories.
and they are
Yeah.
absolutely fabulous. And, you know, John's is just darling. but
Yes.
but
yes.
also
they're doing a great job. Nick is doing a great job, I think.
well, that preservation, Maryland is also doing a great job. And the Maryland Historical Society has a lot of virtual
Yes.
events that they are also sponsoring.
So exciting.
And I think it's really a wonderful resource right now, and it may be a lot to do with their future, but I hope they don't do away with their actual events, because those were so much fun. But anyway, I would say that there's just definitely Baltimore Heritage up their game, and they're going back from 5 days a week to 3 days a week.
Yeah.
But you know, I think today's was on George Peabody, and
Wow.
and his actually experience in establishing the philanthropy. What would you say? His experiencing philanthropy as a hallmark in Baltimore. He had dinner with Johns Hopkins and Enoch Pratt and told them that they needed to do something.
Oh, wow. It worked.
Yep, that's what happened. So
That's so great.
That's better.
Okay, that's enough for me.
Thank you, though. So the NAP's, the National Association of Preservation Commissions, I think is the last week of July. Is that right, Kim?
I'm not sure what the virtual one will be,
Oh, okay.
so perhaps it's the same.
Well, I encourage all of us to go. It's very interesting because basically you're sitting in a room watching, hopefully not a dumb PowerPoint. So now we'll be sitting at home watching, you know, presentations. So it works, I think. We missed the cocktail parties though, and the site visits wherever we are.
Okay, Roberta, I will forward the information about NAPC to you, and we probably have it, don't you? About the date and time of how to register.
Yeah, you can register starting on the 15th.
Okay.
Thanks, like June 15th. Okay. Oh, great. All right. Other comments? If not, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Tim, before you do, I missed a site visit. I guess you guys waved your hands, but I was typing, so I didn't see. So who did site visits for the project?
So Bobby, Will, Bill, Kim?
Everybody except for yourself?
No, I did too. Yeah.
You did, and then Kim?
Yes, Kim, I could say Kim has been to this site
Okay.
10 times.
Okay, thank you.
All right, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Thank you.